It started with a text from my mom, simple, unassuming. "He's moving in, Saturday, be nice." I didn't know what I expected when she said she was marrying again. She'd been alone for years after the divorce, quietly nursing her wounds with work and wine nights. When she started seeing Eric, it caught me off guard. She mentioned him like he was just another date, and then, suddenly, he was her fiancé. Now, stepfather. The word felt strange in my mouth. I was 23, just finished college, still figuring out how to be a person outside of class schedules and campus parties. I'd moved back home to save money while looking for a job, hoping I could get in and out in under 6 months. I didn't expect to share the house with a man I barely knew. Saturday came, and so did Eric. I remember the sound of the U-Haul door clanging open. I looked out the window and saw him lifting a box, forearms flexing, sunglasses perched on his head. He was wearing a tight navy t-shirt and jeans, the kind that fit a little too well. He looked more like someone's CrossFit trainer than someone's new husband. My mom looked impossibly happy beside him, directing traffic on the lawn with her clipboard. I sighed and went down to help. "Hey, Dylan," he said when I reached the driveway. "Thanks for helping out." His voice was deep but calm, not the fake cheerful tone I'd braced for. He held out a hand, and I shook it. Firm grip, warm palm. "No problem," I muttered, then grabbed a box labeled Eric's Clothes. Over the next few hours, we sweated through dozens of trips up and down the stairs. I found myself watching him more than I should have. His shoulders, the way he leaned into the trunk, the way he laughed at my mom's bad jokes. It was subtle at first. I told myself I was just curious about the new guy who was suddenly part of our house. But then he caught me staring once. Just a flicker of a glance, a half smile, and a "what?" that made my stomach flip. "Nothing," I said, walking away too fast. The first few days were weird. Eric moved his stuff into the master bedroom, and suddenly there were 2 toothbrushes in the holder, 2 coffee mugs in the sink, 2 sets of footsteps in the hallway. He was respectful, though. Never loud, never intrusive. If anything, he was too polite, like he was waiting for permission to settle in. I didn't give it. We kept our distance, barely speaking outside of small talk. Until the day Mom had to leave for a work trip. She was gone for 3 days, just me and him in the house. The first morning, I came into the kitchen in boxers and a t-shirt, half asleep. Eric was already there, shirtless, sweatpants hanging low, pouring coffee like this was his house. "Oh, sorry," I said, rubbing my eyes. "You live here too," he said, not missing a beat. "Coffee?" "Yeah, thanks." He slid a mug toward me and leaned against the counter, taking a sip from his own. I tried not to look at his chest, the quiet stretch between us, not tense, just there. "You staying busy?" he asked. "Trying. Sent out a few more applications yesterday." "Anything bite?" "Not yet," he nodded. "It's a weird time. Took me almost 8 months to find something after I left the Navy." I blinked. "You were in the Navy?" "Years ago. Didn't suit me long term. But I learned how to iron a shirt and drink terrible coffee." I laughed before I could stop myself. He smiled, then looked down at his mug. That was the first real conversation we had, and something about it stuck with me. That night, I stayed up late watching TV in the den. Eric came in halfway through some crime drama and sat on the other end of the couch. No words, just quiet company. It was almost 1 a.m. when he finally spoke. "You always stay up this late?" I shrugged. "Only when I can't sleep." He looked at me for a second. "I get that." I wanted to ask more, but I didn't. The next night, it happened again. Same couch, same silence, same late hour. Only this time, we didn't sit as far apart. Maybe it was nothing, but the space between us felt smaller, tighter. I was aware of every breath, every shift of his weight, every time his knee moved a little closer. "You cold?" he asked suddenly. "A little." Without a word, he grabbed the throw blanket from the chair and tossed it over both of us. Our shoulders brushed. Neither of us moved. I didn't sleep that night. The morning after, things were the same on the surface, but I couldn't stop thinking about it. The closeness. The way his arm had rested behind me for a second too long. The faint smell of his cologne. I told myself I was imagining things. I told myself he was just being kind. But the look he gave me over his coffee cup the next morning, that wasn't kindness. That was something else. After Mom got back from her work trip, everything went back to normal, on the surface at least. Eric and I didn't talk about the nights on the couch. We didn't mention the way our arms had touched under that shared blanket, or how I hadn't moved an inch the whole time because it felt too charged, too fragile. Like something unspoken was hovering in the air between us, and naming it might make it real. But I noticed a shift in the way he looked at me when no one else was around, in the way his fingers would graze mine when passing the remote, or how his smile softened whenever our eyes met. Maybe it was just me. Maybe I was reading too much into it. Or maybe not. About a week later, Mom had another trip, this time a full week in San Diego for a conference. She left on a Monday morning. By lunch, it already felt different. The house was quieter. Still, like it was holding its breath. Eric worked from home some days, and that week he was around more than usual. He cooked dinner every night, simple stuff. Grilled chicken, pasta, stir-fry, and made enough for both of us without asking. We started eating together at the dining table, something that never happened before. He'd pour us both a glass of wine, say something like, "No sense letting this go to waste," and we'd sit there, talking about nothing and everything. One night, I asked him about his old life, the Navy, his ex-wife. He was quiet for a second, then just said, "We got married young, wrong reasons, wrong time." There was a sadness in his voice I hadn't heard before. "You regret it?" I asked. He looked up from his glass. Parts of it. But it taught me a lot about myself. I didn't ask what he meant. I didn't need to. That same night, we stayed up watching a documentary about national parks. Somewhere around the part about Yellowstone, I realized we were sitting closer than usual. His arm was behind me again on the couch, casually draped along the backrest. My shoulder was brushing his chest every time I shifted. I tried not to move, tried not to think. Then, without a word, he turned slightly toward me. His eyes were darker in the low light. "You ever wonder," he said quietly, "what your life would look like if one small thing had gone differently?" I swallowed. "All the time." His hand moved to the back of the couch, closer to my neck. Not touching, just near. I felt the heat of it. The tension built slowly, a weight in the air. I turned my head, and we were closer than I realized. Our eyes locked. He didn't move, neither did I. And then, just as suddenly, he stood. "I'm gonna head to bed," he said, his voice even. "Good night, Dylan." I sat there for a long time after he left. The next few days were a blur of normalcy layered with something deeper. Every look carried weight. Every brush of fingertips felt deliberate. We didn't speak of it, but it was there. By Thursday, I couldn't take it anymore. It was late again. We were sitting in the kitchen after dinner, both lingering over our drinks. The air was warm, humid with the heat of the day. I was in a tank top and shorts. He was in sweatpants and a faded gray tee that clung to his chest. He leaned against the counter, arms folded, watching me finish my wine. "You've been quiet tonight," he said. I looked up, just tired. He raised an eyebrow, clearly not buying it. Then he stepped forward. "Not much, just enough." "You sure?" he asked, voice lower now. I could feel my heart thudding against my ribs, my pulse in my throat. I stared at him, unsure of what to say. "No," I admitted. He nodded slowly, like he'd been expecting that answer. "Me either," he said. There was a pause. Long, loud, uncomfortable. Then he stepped closer, and closer, until we were a foot apart. "I don't want to make things weird," he said, his voice careful now, his words deliberate. I held my breath. "But if I'm reading this wrong, tell me." I didn't tell him he was wrong. Instead, I looked at him. Really looked. And I didn't move away. I didn't say anything. I didn't need to. Eric was close enough now that I could see the faint stubble along his jaw, the tension in his neck, the way his eyes kept flicking between mine and my mouth like he wasn't sure what he was about to do, but he was already halfway into doing it. And then he kissed me. It wasn't rushed. It wasn't aggressive, just slow, searching, like he was asking a question he already knew the answer to. His lips were warm, steady, careful. For a second, I froze. This was Eric, my stepfather, but then everything else fell away. Logic, family titles, reasons not to. All I could think about was how right it felt, how long I'd been waiting without even knowing it. I kissed him back. When he pulled back, his breath was shaky. "We shouldn't be doing this," he murmured, still so close I could feel the words against my lips. "I know," I said, but I didn't step away. Neither did he. Instead, he kissed me again, this time with more certainty, more heat. When we finally pulled apart, I could barely breathe. He looked at me like he was trying to memorize something, like he didn't want to forget a single second. "We should talk about this," he said. "Yeah," I whispered, already knowing we wouldn't. "Not yet." He turned and walked out of the kitchen without another word. I stood there, hands still pressed to the counter, heart racing, lips tingling, wondering if I just made the biggest mistake of my life, or something else entirely. The next morning, the air between us was tight. Not tense, exactly, just full. Every glance felt like a question. Every brush of hands felt like an echo. Neither of us brought it up. We went about the day as usual. He did some yard work. I worked on my resume in the living room, pretending to be absorbed in the job boards while my mind spun in circles. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, thinking about how everything had changed with a single kiss. Just after midnight, I heard soft footsteps in the hallway. A pause, then a quiet knock. I got up and opened the door. Eric was standing there, barefoot, wearing a white t-shirt and gym shorts. His expression was unreadable. "Can I come in?" he asked. I stepped aside. He sat on the edge of my bed, looking down at his hands. "I don't know what this is," he said. "I just know it doesn't feel wrong." I sat next to him. It doesn't. We didn't say anything for a while. Just sat there in the dark, the only sound the soft hum of the ceiling fan. He reached for my hand. I let him. That night, he stayed. He didn't touch me beyond holding my hand. Didn't push for more. He just lay beside me, facing the ceiling like I was, our fingers still intertwined. It was quiet, strange, intimate. When I woke up, he was still there, and everything felt different. The morning after he stayed in my bed, something subtle had shifted, not just between us, but in me. Eric was still asleep when I woke up. His breathing was slow, his face relaxed in the pale light filtering through the blinds. He looked younger somehow, softer. I studied the way his chest rose and fell, the way his hand still barely touched mine. And for the first time in a long while, I didn't feel restless. I got up quietly, made coffee, and stood at the kitchen sink staring out at the backyard. Everything felt too quiet and too loud at the same time. My brain was trying to label what this was, what we were doing, what it meant. But no matter what words I searched for, wrong, complicated, temporary, none of them fit exactly. Eric came into the kitchen not long after, his hair slightly mussed, wearing the same clothes from last night. He paused in the doorway like he wasn't sure if he was allowed to be here anymore. "Morning," I said, keeping my voice light. "Hey." His voice was low, careful. I poured him a cup of coffee, slid it across the counter. He accepted it with a small nod, eyes meeting mine for a beat longer than normal. We didn't say much. We didn't need to. The silence felt mutual, agreed upon. A kind of fragile peace. The rest of the day passed with that same quiet energy. We didn't touch, didn't flirt, didn't cross any lines. but it hung between us. The memory of the night before, the closeness, the decisions we hadn't yet made. That night, he didn't knock. He just came into my room, late and soft-footed, like it was already routine. This time, he pulled me into him when he lay down, an arm draped around my waist. No words, no tension, just warmth. We didn't sleep right away. We lay there in the dark, bodies close, breath sinking. "This is crazy," I whispered. "I know. She'll kill us if she finds out." "She won't," he said. But his voice didn't sound so sure, and I realized then, we hadn't even said the word want. We hadn't admitted desire out loud. It was all implied, all acted out in silence and space and cautious steps in the dark. The next few days were a blur of stolen glances, quiet moments, tension pulsing just beneath the surface. At night, he came to my room. Every time felt like a risk, like we were pressing deeper into something we couldn't undo. But I didn't want to undo it. I didn't want to stop. One evening, just before Mom came back, we sat in the backyard as the sun went down. He was sipping a beer, legs stretched out, watching the sky turn pink over the fence. I was beside him on the porch steps, picking at the label of my water bottle. He looked at me. "What happens when she's back?" I stared out across the yard. "I don't know." He nodded slowly, the way he always did when he was processing something. "I don't want this to be a thing we pretend didn't happen," he said. "Me either. But if it has to be quiet, you okay with that?" I looked at him. Really looked. The lines around his eyes, the steady patience in his posture, the way he wasn't trying to convince me of anything, just asking. "I don't know what this is," I admitted, "but I know I don't want to lose it." He smiled, sad and sweet. "Me either." And just like that, we made a quiet agreement. No rules, no promises, just this, whatever it was. A secret, maybe. A comfort. A beginning. The day Mom came back, everything changed. At least on the surface. The night before, Eric didn't come to my room. We didn't talk about it, but we both knew it was safer that way. In the morning, we acted like roommates. Or family. Or something in between. Mom swept into the house with that familiar whirlwind energy, dropping her suitcase by the stairs, already asking about groceries and mail and if anyone fed the cat. Eric kissed her on the cheek, helped her with her bags. I stayed in the kitchen, pretending not to notice how his hand lingered just a second too long on her back. For the first few days, we went back to normal. We played our roles. Family dinners, chores, small talk. It was like the last week never happened. But late at night, I'd lie in bed staring at the ceiling, heart thudding with every creak of the floorboards, wondering if he was thinking about it too. Then came Thursday night. Mom had a book club thing across town and didn't come home until after 10. I was in the den, pretending to scroll through my phone, when I heard Eric's footsteps. He didn't say anything at first, just sat down beside me on the couch, close, but not too close. "Hey," he said softly. I looked at him. "Hey." He watched me for a moment, then leaned back with a sigh. "This is harder than I thought." "What is?" "Pretending we don't feel what we feel." The silence that followed was heavy, but not uncomfortable. Just honest. "I don't know what we're doing," I said, "but I don't want it to stop." He turned to me, expression unreadable. "Neither do I, but it's going to get more complicated. I know." "She trusts us," he said, "both of us." That part stung. I hadn't let myself think about it too much. What it would mean if she ever found out. What it would do to her. To him. To us. But I also couldn't pretend the connection between us wasn't real. "Do you think about it all the time?" I asked. His eyes met mine. "Every second I'm in this house." We didn't kiss. We didn't touch. We just sat there in the dim light. Two people wrapped in something fragile, dangerous, and deeply undeniable. From that night on, we were careful. Too careful. But that made it worse. Every smile held a message. Every brush of his hand across my shoulder made my breath catch. We were dancing in this quiet, invisible space where everything looked normal, but nothing felt normal. Then one afternoon, I caught him watching me in the hallway. It was quick, barely more than a glance, but I felt it, like a thread tugging between us. Later that night, after she went to bed, he knocked on my door. I opened it, and before I could speak, he kissed me. It was different this time. Hungrier, less cautious. I pulled him inside, closed the door, and for the first time, we stopped pretending. We didn't go all the way, not that night, but we crossed another line. He pressed me against the wall, kissed down my neck, whispered my name like it meant something more than just identity. When we finally pulled apart, breathless, he leaned his forehead against mine. "This is real," he whispered. "You feel it too, right?" I nodded. "I can't stop thinking about you," he said, "even when I know I shouldn't." I didn't say anything. I didn't need to. We both knew this wasn't just about attraction. It was about comfort. Intimacy. Something that had started as silence and grown into something neither of us could define. Something that was quickly becoming impossible to hide. After that night, everything grew more intense. We still didn't talk about it, not directly, but we didn't need to. The tension was always there, living in the in-between moments, in the way he looked at me when no one else was watching, in the way I lingered in the kitchen a little too long, when he walked in wearing only a towel. It was reckless. But it was also magnetic. We developed a rhythm. Subtle touches during the day. Quick, quiet kisses at night when the house was still. We never said what we were doing. Never labeled it. That made it easier to believe we weren't crossing a line we both knew we already had. And then one evening, Mom left again. Just overnight, a networking event in the city. The minute her car pulled out of the driveway, the energy between us changed. We didn't even try to keep our distance this time. The second the door clicked shut, Eric turned to me, eyes locked, and I knew we were past the point of pretending. That night, he didn't knock. He came into my room like it was his, and we barely made it to the bed. It was slow at first. Gentle. Like we were still checking, still asking. "Are you sure? Are you sure?" Then it wasn't. When it was over, we lay there tangled up, breathless, sweaty, not touching now, but not moving away either. He turned his head on the pillow and looked at me. "You okay?" he asked. "Yeah," I said. My voice came out rough but certain. "You?" He nodded slowly. "I haven't felt this in a long time." We didn't speak again. He stayed the night. I woke up before him, watched his chest rise and fall in the early morning light. For a second, it felt peaceful. But then my phone buzzed. A text from Mom. "Traffic's good. Should be home early afternoon. Miss you guys." I stared at it for a long time. Eric stirred beside me. "Everything okay?" he mumbled, still half asleep. "She's coming back early," I said. He sat up slowly, rubbing his eyes. "Right." We didn't panic. We just moved, cleaned up, put on fresh clothes, pretended like we hadn't crossed every line imaginable. By the time she walked through the door, the house looked exactly like she'd left it. And so did we. But I knew better. Something had shifted. It wasn't just about the risk anymore. It wasn't just a secret. It was a relationship. And we had no idea how much longer we could hide it. Life went back to normal again, at least from the outside. Mom never suspected a thing. She was wrapped up in work, house stuff, talking about maybe getting a dog. Her version of family life had returned to its usual rhythm, and we just blended back in. Eric the calm, responsible husband, me the son figuring out post-grad life. Nothing out of the ordinary. Except everything was, because every night after she fell asleep, Eric would come to my room. Sometimes we'd talk. Sometimes we wouldn't. Sometimes we just lay in bed together, his fingers laced with mine, like that was enough. But it was starting to wear on me. Not the secrecy, I could handle that. It was the not knowing, what we were, where we were going, how much longer this could last. One night, after he slipped out of my bed and into the hallway, I followed. He turned, surprised, bare feet on the carpet, and whispered, "Everything okay?" I looked at him, really looked. "What are we doing, Eric?" He swallowed, glanced down the hallway toward Mom's door, then back at me. "I don't know," he said. "I just know I don't want it to stop. Do you think about what happens if she finds out?" "Every day." I crossed my arms, leaning against the wall. And I haven't figured out what to do." I hated that answer, but I also understood it. "We can't keep doing this," I said quietly. "Not like this." He didn't argue, just nodded. "I don't want to lose you," I added, surprising myself with how raw it sounded. He stepped closer. His hand found mine in the dark. "You won't, I promise." But promises felt cheap when they couldn't be said in daylight. The next week, I got a job interview. Nothing huge, just a design assistant role at a small firm in the city. I didn't tell Eric at first. I didn't want to see his face when he realized I might be leaving. But he found out. Mom mentioned it over dinner like it was no big deal. Dylan's interview went well, by the way. If he gets the job, he'll probably move out next month. Eric froze with his fork halfway to his mouth. "Oh, that's great," he said too carefully. Later that night, when we were alone, he asked, "So, you're leaving?" "Maybe, if they offer it," he nodded. "That's good," but I could tell it didn't feel good. Neither of us said it, but we both knew what it meant. Less time, more distance, less of whatever this was. Maybe even the end of it. He didn't come to my room that night, or the next. It was like we were already practicing being apart. Then, one evening, I came home late from a friend's place. Mom was already asleep. The house was dark except for the hallway light. Eric was in the kitchen, sitting alone at the table. He looked up when I walked in, eyes tired. "Couldn't sleep," he said. I grabbed a glass of water, sat across from him. We didn't speak for a while. Then he looked at me and said, "You make me feel more like myself than I felt in years." It hit me like a punch. "You think we'll ever be able to stop pretending?" I asked. He didn't answer right away. Then, softly, "I don't want to pretend with you anymore." We sat there in silence again, not sure what came next, but knowing, somehow, that whatever it was going to change everything. The next morning, I got the job offer. It should have felt like a win, a step forward, but all I felt was a dull ache in my chest. I told Mom first. She was thrilled, hugged me, started talking about finding boxes and whether I'd need help moving. Eric stood in the background, quiet but smiling. The kind of polite, practiced smile people wear when they're trying not to fall apart. Later that night, I was in my room packing a drawer when he knocked. I turned around, halfway through folding a hoodie. He came in, closed the door softly behind him. "You really leaving?" "I think I have to." He nodded, looked at the floor, then back at me. "I don't want this to end." "I don't either. But we can't keep living in shadows." I sat on the edge of the bed, exhaling slowly. "So what do we do?" He stepped closer, stopped in front of me. "We tell her." My head snapped up. "Are you serious? She deserves to know the truth. You do. I do. And then what? She throws us both out?" "She might. Or she might hate me. But I can't keep loving you like this, in pieces." That was the first time he said it out loud. "I love you." I didn't even realize I was crying until he knelt in front of me, his hands on my knees, thumb brushing a tear off my cheek. "I didn't plan this," he whispered. "You were supposed to be my stepson. That was it. But then you walked around this house like you'd been here all your life, like you saw through me, and I didn't stand a chance." I leaned forward, pressed my forehead to his. "I love you too. We didn't tell her the next day, or the one after that, but we started talking about it seriously, what it would mean, what it could cost, and still, neither of us backed down. Eventually, we did tell her. It was awful, worse than I imagined. Her silence, her confusion, the look in her eyes like something was breaking apart from the inside. She didn't scream. She didn't throw things. She just walked out of the room. That night, she didn't come home. Eric and I sat on the floor of the living room, holding hands like lifelines. We didn't know what tomorrow would look like, but we knew we weren't going back to pretending. A few months later, I moved into my own place in the city. Eric came with me. We didn't rush anything. We didn't post pictures. We didn't need to label it for anyone else. We just lived it. Quietly. Honestly. Fully. And every time I wake up to find his hand still resting in mine, I know we made the right choice. We stopped pretending. We started something real. And despite everything it cost, despite how impossible it seemed at first, I'd choose it again. Every time.